Brantley with the Arkansas Times on Friday, December the 16th. Let's start with some good news today. They broke ground today, or knocked down a wall, I think, specifically to get the project started on what's going to be called a paint factory. This is Cromwell Architects' $10 million reimagining of a former Sterling paint factory on the east side of Interstate 30 in what used to be a decrepit and generally deserted warehouse district on the east side of Little Rock. The Clinton Library came along, Heifer International came along, 2 microbreweries came along, a whiskey distillery came along, and now Cromwell, which is going to relocate its offices there, build residential units, perhaps build some more restaurants and other retail opportunities. Other projects are planned in what's being called the East Village development that spans from 9th Street to the river and from Interstate 30 to the airport. It's an exciting thing to think about new density, new people, new businesses in downtown Little Rock. It's an antidote to sprawl. It's produced great cities elsewhere. Maybe it will in Little Rock as well. Moses Tucker and Central Construction are joining Cromwell in the development. The Legislative Council this morning took up the question of a new $160 million 7-year contract for an Indiana firm to run 7 juvenile lockup facilities around the state that are now being run by local agencies. It failed to get the required approval. House members voted to approve the contract. Senate members did not. There's going to be an emergency meeting December 30th to see if there'll be an emergency procurement contract to turn this work over to the Indiana firm. A lot of criticism among legislators and others about this decision. It's a big cost increase. It's not certain that this firm will do as many things as the local agencies are required to do. The agency has some bad publicity in its past and Indiana operations. People are wondering why the Hutchinson administration is pushing so hard for this outside administrator. More questions to be answered. Guns, we never get enough of them in Arkansas. Senator Alan Clark has filed yet another gun privilege expansion bill in the legislature. This one will allow people to bring their concealed carry guns onto the private parking lots of private businesses. This, some think, might infringe on the constitutional limitation that says private property rights are supreme among everything else in Arkansas, maybe except when it comes to guns. Having a bunch of guns in the parking lot of an industrial facility might not strike some as a good idea, but Alan Clark thinks we need it. I say if we're going to expand guns, we ought to go all the way. Open carry in the state capitol. What could go wrong? The state's unemployment rate in November held steady at 4%, same as a month before. There were slightly fewer number of people working. Big controversy at the state capitol over a state advertising contract, a $35 million deal to do advertising for the state lottery. CJRW won it, and one of its competitors has filed a protest. They say that it's now CJRW, not Cranford, didn't disclose that its clients include Oaklawn Park. The casino, of course, is a competitor with the lottery for state gamblers' dollars. That should have been disclosed, they say. CJRW and Oaklawn don't seem to have a problem with it. This is the 4th big state contract CJRW has gotten since Asa Hutchinson became governor. CJRW, after Asa became governor, acquired the ad agency of Ben Heathcott, who'd been Governor Asa Hutchinson's ad man. Perhaps coincidental that suddenly they seem to be a leading candidate for a lot of state advertising business, but there's a lot of talk in the ad community about it. A lot of dollars at issue there. Elsewhere, Pine Bluff officials say that they understand that legislators in the state seem anxious to sever the tie between the state and the Entertainers Hall of Fame that finds a home in Pine Bluff and is owned by the city of Pine Bluff. They seem to be okay with it. The operation, which has roots back to 1985, has an annual induction ceremony. It's never been much of a money maker. The ceremony itself generally is a money loser. The state seems perhaps interested in shucking itself of that responsibility. Pine Bluff has fallen on hard times, as you know, but it still wants the Entertainers Hall of Fame. The state, while it's anxious to get rid of this Hall of Fame, as you may know, started a new Hall of Fame operation this year, the Food Hall of Fame. It's going to honor restaurants, but it's not going to be a permanent facility. I think it's just going to be an awards dinner. Yesterday, Vincenzo Locko sent a note to other state Democrats saying he was not going to seek a 3rd term as state Democratic Party chairman. The party has lost clout in each of the last elections, despite what I think were some pretty strong efforts by Locko. He couldn't figure out a way to stem the tide of republicanism that has swept Arkansas in the post-Obama era. Maybe somebody else will have a shot at it. Michael John Gray, a state representative, says he'd like to run for the party post. Some others are interested as well. And on the federal government scene, there's always something out of the Donald Trump election. One is that Republicans don't take losing very well. They're not very good, gracious winners, actually, if you follow Donald Trump very much. In North Carolina, the legislature, reacting to a Democratic win of the state governor's office is doing a last-minute special legislative session to basically strip the governor of as much power as possible before he takes office. Is it constitutional? The North Carolina courts may have to decide. An interesting media reaction to Donald Trump, who continues to say things that simply aren't true. Is it a lie? I don't know. He went on Twitter yesterday to say that the Obama administration, if it had problems with Russian involvement in the election process this year, should have said something before the election. Well, that's just false to say they didn't, and anybody who reads the newspapers know better. In fact, the Obama administration tried to get Republican officials to make a joint statement condemning Russian involvement in the election before the election, but Republicans refused to do so. They knew the work was helping Donald Trump. The interesting thing I noticed, both the Los Angeles Times and New York Times, also USA Today, headline their stories talking about Donald Trump's false claims. They could have said lie and been just equally accurate. The Democrat Gazette just chose to emphasize that Trump was questioning the White House for not having said anything before the election. You had to read very closely to understand that in fact they had, and Trump was just trying to cover up for his own record because he thinks this is detracting from his legitimacy as president. I'm afraid he's legitimate. We've got him, even though I think the Electoral College vote Monday holds a little degree of drama. I expect to see him inaugurated January 20th and for the press to have a lot to cover. I'm Max Brantley. I'll be back next week.